The ambulance doors slammed shut as the elderly man fought for every breath, his trembling hands still gripping the sleeve of the woman who had risked everything to save him. Around them, shocked shoppers stood frozen while security guards whispered among themselves. No one knew that the exhausted single mother covered in dust and tears had just saved the life of one of the city's most respected businessmen. Instead of receiving gratitude, she was handed a termination letter before the ambulance even disappeared down the street. She watched her job vanish in the same moment she watched the man she had rescued disappear toward the hospital. What happened over the following days would change not only her own future, but the lives of everyone who had chosen greed over compassion. Before we begin, if you believe kindness always comes back in unexpected ways and everyone deserves a second chance, please like this video, leave a comment, share it with your friends, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness too. Your support helps us continue bringing inspiring stories that remind the world that hope is never truly lost. Morning sunlight poured across the busy streets as 29-year-old Marissa Hale hurried toward the downtown shopping plaza. She balanced a worn backpack on one shoulder and held the tiny hand of her 6-year-old son, Owen, who smiled despite the patched knees on his school uniform. Life had never been generous to Marissa. Her husband had walked away years earlier, leaving behind unpaid bills and broken promises. Since then, every sunrise had become another race against time. She worked as a cashier at an upscale department store during the day and cleaned offices several evenings each week just to keep food on the table and rent paid. Sleep had become a luxury she barely remembered. Yet every morning she forced herself to smile because Owen deserved to believe tomorrow would always be better than today. The department store prided itself on elegance and perfection. Employees were reminded daily that customers came first, appearances mattered, and delays were unacceptable. Marissa rarely complained. She greeted every shopper with warmth, helped elderly customers carry heavy bags, and often skipped her own lunch break to assist overwhelmed coworkers. Many customers remembered her gentle smile, but management barely noticed her unless something went wrong. That morning the store buzzed with excitement because an influential investor was rumored to be visiting nearby businesses. Managers rushed employees from aisle to aisle, polishing displays and checking uniforms. Marissa quietly focused on her register, hoping the busy day would pass without problems. Owen was safely at school, and she planned to surprise him with his favorite vegetable soup for dinner if she could afford fresh ingredients after work. Around noon, panic erupted just outside the store entrance. An elderly gentleman suddenly collapsed near the fountain, striking his head against the pavement. Shoppers screamed. Several people lifted their phones to record the frightening scene, while others backed away in confusion. The old man's breathing became shallow, and his face turned pale within seconds. Without thinking about company policy or angry supervisors, Marissa abandoned her register and sprinted outside. She remembered the first aid lessons she had attended years earlier at a community center. Kneeling beside the stranger, she checked his pulse, steadied his breathing, and instructed nearby witnesses to call emergency services immediately. She stayed calm despite the growing crowd, speaking gently while supporting his head and keeping him conscious until paramedics arrived. Blood stained her sleeves and dust covered her uniform, but she never stepped away. The elderly man opened his eyes only briefly before losing consciousness again, his fingers weakly holding onto Marissa's arm as though he somehow knew she was the reason he still had hope. The ambulance finally arrived. Paramedics praised her quick actions, quietly admitting that several more minutes without assistance could have cost the man his life. Marissa watched them drive away with relief filling her tired heart. She believed she had simply done what any decent person should have done. The moment she walked back into the store, reality struck harder than she ever expected. Her manager stood waiting with folded arms and a face full of anger. Customers had been left waiting at the register, complaints had reached the front office, and company policy clearly stated that employees were never allowed to leave their assigned stations without authorization. Marissa tried explaining the emergency, but no one wanted to hear it. Within minutes, she was escorted into a small office where a termination notice was placed on the desk. Years of loyalty disappeared beneath a single signature. She walked out carrying a cardboard box filled with family photos, a coffee mug Owen had painted for Mother's Day, and the crushing weight of uncertainty. Tears blurred her vision, yet she refused to cry until she reached the bus stop. She could not understand how saving someone's life had become the reason she lost the only stable income her little family had. That evening, Owen noticed the sadness hiding behind his mother's smile. Their apartment felt quieter than ever. Marissa counted the few dollars remaining inside an old kitchen jar, realizing they would barely cover groceries for the week. She silently wondered how she would pay next month's rent. Fear wrapped around her heart like heavy chains, but she kissed Owen goodnight and whispered that everything would somehow work out. She refused to let him see the storm raging inside her. Meanwhile, the elderly man she had rescued slowly regained consciousness in a private hospital room. His name was Theodore Ashcroft, the retired founder of one of the country's largest construction companies. Doctors informed his family that immediate assistance at the scene had prevented permanent brain damage. Theodore listened carefully, asking only one question. He wanted to know who the woman was who had refused to leave his side. His grandson, Adrian Ashcroft, arrived from an overseas business meeting late that night. At only 35, Adrian had already built a reputation as one of the city's most successful young millionaires after expanding his grandfather's company into international markets. Although newspapers admired his wealth, those closest to him knew his greatest weakness was family. Hearing that his grandfather had nearly died shook him deeply. When Theodore finally described the exhausted young mother who had saved him, Adrian ordered his assistants to find her immediately. What they discovered left him stunned. Security footage from the shopping plaza clearly showed Marissa rushing toward the fallen man, while dozens of others hesitated. Even more disturbing was learning she had been fired moments later for leaving her register. Adrian watched the footage several times in silence. Each replay strengthened his disbelief. The woman who had saved his grandfather had lost everything because she chose compassion over corporate rules. The following morning, Marissa spent hours walking from business to business searching for work. Every application seemed to end with the same polite rejection. Companies wanted experience, flexible schedules, or immediate availability that conflicted with caring for Owen. By afternoon, the blistering sun made every step feel heavier. Still, she refused to give up. As she left another unsuccessful interview, a sleek black car quietly pulled beside the sidewalk. She assumed someone important was simply passing through until the passenger door opened and a well-dressed gentleman respectfully introduced himself as Adrian Ashcroft. Marissa immediately worried she had somehow done something wrong. Instead, Adrian thanked her with genuine emotion. He explained that the man she had rescued was his grandfather and that their family owed her far more than words could express. Marissa listened politely but insisted she expected nothing in return. She believed kindness should never come with a price tag. She had simply seen another human being in need. Those humble words affected Adrian more deeply than any business negotiation ever had. For the first time in years, he met someone whose actions could not be explained by profit, recognition, or personal gain. She had risked her livelihood to save a stranger without knowing his name or fortune. Adrian invited Marissa to visit the hospital so Theodore could personally thank her. Reluctantly, she accepted, bringing Owen along after school. Watching Theodore embrace the little boy with grateful tears reminded everyone in the room that miracles often arrive through ordinary people. Before leaving, Theodore quietly asked Adrian to investigate the department store that had dismissed such an honorable employee. What Adrian uncovered shocked even experienced executives. The store's management had developed a reputation for mistreating workers, ignoring emergencies and intimidating staff into silence. Within days, news of Marissa's dismissal spread across local media after witnesses shared videos showing her saving Theodore's life. Public opinion changed overnight. Thousands of people questioned how any company could punish someone for preventing a tragedy. The department store suddenly faced overwhelming criticism, declining sales, and embarrassed investors. Executives who had ignored Marissa's pleas now desperately tried contacting her, offering apologies and promises to restore her position. But life had already begun moving in a different direction. Adrian approached Marissa with an opportunity unlike anything she had imagined. Instead of returning to the place that had broken her spirit, he offered her a position leading the Community Outreach Foundation funded by the Ashcroft family. The role included fair pay, flexible hours, health care, educational assistance for Owen, and the chance to organize programs helping struggling parents find employment. Marissa could hardly believe someone trusted her with such responsibility. Adrian simply smiled and explained that compassion could never be taught in business school. Skills could always be learned, but a heart willing to help strangers was priceless. Over the following months, Marissa transformed the foundation into a beacon of hope. Hundreds of single parents received job training, emergency childcare, and financial guidance. Families who once believed they had no future slowly rebuilt their lives because one woman understood exactly what hopelessness felt like. Owen flourished as well. He watched his mother regain her confidence, laughing more often than he had seen in years. Their tiny apartment eventually became a warm little home filled not with expensive possessions, but with peace, gratitude, and hope. Even Theodore recovered fully, often telling visitors that his second-chance life had not come from wealth or influence, but from the courage of a tired single mother who refused to walk away when everyone else stood still. The department store eventually changed its emergency policies, proving that sometimes one act of kindness can force an entire organization to rethink its values. Although the apology arrived too late to restore what Marissa had lost, it reminded others that doing the right thing should never be punished. If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Ripple of Kindness too. Every act of support helps spread more stories of kindness that inspire people around the world. Glowing star special request, comment below. Kindness always finds its way back. We'd love to know where you're watching from and whether you believe one good deed can change a person's life. As the sun set over the city, Marissa realized that losing her job had never been the end of her story. It had simply been the painful beginning of a far greater purpose. Sometimes life closes one door with heartbreaking force, only to reveal another that leads to hope, healing, and blessings beyond imagination. Her journey became living proof that true kindness never disappears. It quietly travels through the lives it touches until, one day, it returns with a reward far greater than anyone could have expected. And in a world that often seems driven by power and money, the greatest miracle of all remains a compassionate heart willing to help a stranger without expecting anything in return.